He controlled 90% of America's oil. It's not 90% of a market. It's not 90% of an industry sector. 90% of the entire oil supply in the United States. Every time someone lit a lamp, he got richer. Every time a factory turned on, money flowed into his pockets. Every train, every machine, every flicker of light in the darkness, he owned it all. John D. Rockefeller built an empire so powerful that the government didn't just regulate it. They had to break it into pieces and scatter those pieces across the country like they were dismantling a weapon of mass destruction. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. When they shattered his empire into 34 separate companies, trying to destroy his wealth and power, something unexpected happened. He became even richer. This is the story of the most dominant businessman in American history, the journalists who exposed him, and the Supreme Court case that changed capitalism forever. And trust me, the ending is not what you expect. Let's go back to 1839, Cleveland, Ohio. John D. Rockefeller is born into a family that's barely scraping by. His father is a con man, literally. Devil Bill Rockefeller travels around selling fake cancer cures to desperate people. He's gone for months at a time, leaving young John, his mother, and his siblings to survive on almost nothing. John learns 2 lessons early. Money equals security, and you can't trust anyone to take care of you. He gets his first job at 16 as a bookkeeper, making 50 cents a day. He's obsessed with numbers. Every penny is recorded. Every transaction is tracked. He keeps personal ledgers of every cent he earns and spends for his entire life. His coworkers think he's weird. His boss thinks he's too intense. But John doesn't care what people think. Cares about one thing: never being poor again. By age 20, he's saved enough to start his first business, a commodities trading company. He's good at it, really good. Within a few years, he's making serious money. But then something happens that changes everything. In 1859, they discover oil in Pennsylvania. Now, most people don't understand how revolutionary oil was in the 1860s, before oil. People lit their homes with whale oil or candles. Whale oil was expensive, and whales were being hunted to near extinction. Candles were cheap, but gave terrible light. Then someone figures out how to refine crude oil into kerosene. And kerosene burns clean, burns bright, and costs a fraction of what whale oil costs. Suddenly, there's a gold rush. Except it's black, and it comes out of the ground in Pennsylvania. Thousands of people flood into the oil regions. Drilling operations pop up everywhere. It's complete chaos. Fortunes are made and lost overnight. Oil prices swing wildly. One day, crude oil sells for $10 a barrel. The next day, it's 50 cents. Most people see chaos. Rockefeller sees opportunity, but he doesn't do what everyone else does. He doesn't go drill for oil. He thinks drilling is too risky, too unpredictable. Instead, he decides to refine it. In 1863, he builds his first oil refinery in Cleveland. And this is where his genius starts to show. While everyone else is focused on finding oil, Rockefeller focuses on controlling what happens to oil after it comes out of the ground. He studies every aspect of the refining process. He figures out how to extract more kerosene from each barrel of crude. He finds uses for the waste products that other refineries just throw away. He sells some byproducts as lubricants, others as fuel. Other refineries are getting maybe 60% efficiency from their crude oil. Rockefeller is getting 85%. He's making more money per barrel than anyone else in the business. But efficiency isn't enough for him. He wants control. So he starts doing something that nobody in business had really done before at this scale. He starts buying out his competitors. Not aggressively at first. He approaches other refinery owners in Cleveland and makes them offers. Fair offers, usually. Sell to me and you can stay on as a manager. I'll give you stock in my company. We'll all make more money together than we would competing. A lot of people take the deal. Within a few years, Rockefeller controls most of the refineries in Cleveland. But Cleveland is just one city. He wants it all. In 1870, Rockefeller creates Standard Oil Company. And this is where things get interesting. This is where the line between genius and ruthless starts to blur. Rockefeller realizes that oil refining has one major cost that's killing everyone's profits: transportation. You have to ship crude oil from the wells to your refinery. Then you have to ship the refined kerosene to customers. All of this goes by railroad, and the railroads are charging whatever they want. So Rockefeller makes a deal. He goes to the railroad companies and says, "I'll guarantee you a massive amount of business. I'll ship thousands of barrels a day on your trains. But in exchange, you give me a discount." The railroads agree. They'd rather have guaranteed volume at a lower rate than unpredictable business at a higher rate. But Rockefeller doesn't stop there. He negotiates something called a rebate. Not only does he get a discount on his own shipping, but the railroads secretly pay him a percentage of what his competitors pay to ship their oil. Think about that. Every time a competing refinery ships oil on the railroad, they're unknowingly giving Rockefeller money. His competitors are literally funding their own destruction. With these railroad deals in place, Rockefeller can undercut any competitor on price. A rival refinery tries to compete. Rockefeller drops his prices below cost in that market until the competitor goes bankrupt. Then he buys their refinery for pennies on the dollar. Someone tries to ship oil without using Standard Oil. Rockefeller's railroad friends raise their shipping rates or refuse to ship for them at all. Independent oil producers try to build their own pipelines. Mysterious accidents happen. Right-of-way permits get denied. Construction gets sabotaged. By 1880, Standard Oil controls about 90% of oil refining in the United States. Rockefeller is 31 years old, and he's the most powerful businessman in America. But power on this scale doesn't go unnoticed. Let me introduce you to Ida Tarbell. She's a journalist, born in Pennsylvania oil country. Her father was an independent oil producer who got crushed by Standard Oil's business tactics. She watched Rockefeller's company destroy her father's livelihood. She watched him sink into depression. She watched their family lose everything. And she decided to fight back the only way she knew how, with words. In 1902, Tarbell starts publishing a series of articles in McClure's magazine called The History of the Standard Oil Company. She spends years researching. She interviews former Standard Oil employees. She digs through court records, railroad documents, business filings. She finds evidence of every shady deal, every crushed competitor, every backroom agreement, and she writes it all down in clear, factual, devastating detail. Her articles are a sensation. Everyone reads them. Suddenly, the American public understands exactly how Rockefeller built his empire. And they're furious. Now, here's what's fascinating about Rockefeller's response to Tarbell. He could have sued her. He could have used his massive resources to discredit her. He could have bought the magazine and killed the story. But he doesn't. He barely responds at all. In private letters, he dismisses her as Miss Tarbell and insists that everything Standard Oil did was legal and justified by business necessity. And technically, he's not entirely wrong. Most of what Standard Oil did wasn't illegal because there were no laws against it yet. Monopolies weren't illegal. Predatory pricing wasn't illegal. Secret railroad rebates weren't illegal. But just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. And the American public was starting to demand change. In 1906, the federal government files a lawsuit against Standard Oil under the Sherman Antitrust Act. The case takes 5 years to work through the courts. 5 years of testimonies, evidence, legal arguments. Rockefeller himself testifies. He sits in the courtroom, calm and collected, and answers questions. He admits to nothing. He defends every business decision as rational and necessary. He genuinely seems to believe he did nothing wrong. In his mind, he brought order to chaos. He made oil cheap and available to everyone. He created jobs. T made America's economy run. The fact that he became unimaginably wealthy doing it, that was just proof the system worked. But the Supreme Court disagreed. On May 15, 1911, the Supreme Court rules against Standard Oil. The verdict is unanimous, 9-0. Standard Oil is an illegal monopoly, and it must be broken up. The company is ordered to split into 34 separate independent companies within 6 months. The news makes headlines around the world. It's the biggest antitrust case in history. The government has defeated the most powerful corporation on earth. Rockefeller's empire is shattered. Journalists celebrate. Reform politicians declare victory. The American public feels vindicated. There's just one problem. Nobody thought about what would happen to Rockefeller's stock. See, when Standard Oil was broken up, it was divided into 34 separate companies. But the shareholders of Standard Oil, including Rockefeller, received shares in all 34 companies. Rockefeller owned about a quarter of Standard Oil. Now he owned about a quarter of 34 different oil companies. Companies with names like Standard Oil of New Jersey, Standard Oil of New York, Standard Oil of California. Companies that would eventually become Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron. And here's what nobody predicted. Once these companies were independent, they competed more aggressively. They innovated faster. They expanded into new markets, and their stock prices went up, way up. Within a year of the breakup, Rockefeller's net worth had nearly doubled. The government broke up his monopoly to reduce his power and wealth. Instead, they made him the richest person in human history. Let me put Rockefeller's wealth in perspective. At his peak, his net worth was estimated at about $900 million. That was in 1913. In today's money, adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $400 billion. Bill Gates, at his peak, about $130 billion. Jeff Bezos, around $200 billion. Elon Musk, approximately $230 billion. Rockefeller was wealthier than all of them. And he achieved that wealth when the entire American economy was a fraction of what it is today. At one point, his personal wealth was estimated at nearly 2% of the entire US GDP. Imagine, one person today having personal wealth equal to 2% of America's entire economy. That would be about $500 billion. Rockefeller wasn't just rich, he was on a different scale entirely. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because Rockefeller didn't just hoard his wealth, he gave most of it away, starting in the 1890s. Influenced by his Baptist faith and advice from advisors who told him his reputation was terrible, Rockefeller began systematic philanthropy on a scale that had never been seen before. He created the University of Chicago, basically funding the entire institution. He established the Rockefeller Foundation, which fought diseases worldwide. His foundation funded the research that led to a yellow fever vaccine, helped eliminate hookworm in the American South, and supported medical research globally. He created the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, which became one of the world's leading biomedical research centers. By the time he died in 1937, at age 97, he'd given away about $550 million, more than half his fortune. In today's money, that's over $200 billion in charitable giving. So who was John D. Rockefeller, really? Was he a ruthless monopolist who crushed competitors and corrupted democracy? Or was he a visionary who brought order to chaos and used his wealth to benefit humanity? Here's what I think historians miss when they try to categorize Rockefeller as purely good or purely evil. He was both, and that's what makes him so fascinating. He absolutely crushed competitors without mercy. He absolutely manipulated markets and corrupted politicians. He built a monopoly that was genuinely dangerous to democracy. But he also revolutionized an industry. He made kerosene so cheap that ordinary people could afford to light their homes. He created a distribution system so efficient that oil products reached every corner of America. And he gave away a fortune that funded some of the most important medical and educational advances of the 20th century. He's not a hero or a villain. He's a case study in what happens when someone is brilliant, ambitious, and completely unwilling to let morality get in the way of efficiency. Now let's talk about legacy, because this is where it gets really interesting. Remember those 34 companies that Standard Oil was broken into? Several of them eventually merged back together. Standard Oil of New Jersey became Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil. Then in 1999, Exxon and Mobil merged into ExxonMobil. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. Standard Oil of Indiana became Amoco, which was later absorbed by BP. Standard Oil of Ohio became part of BP as well. So in a weird way, Standard Oil is kind of reassembling itself. Not as one company, but as a small group of massive corporations that dominate the global oil market. The breakup happened over a century ago, and the pieces are still finding their way back together. Rockefeller probably would have appreciated the irony. There's this story about Rockefeller that I love. In 1930, when he's 91 years old and has been retired for decades, a reporter asks him, "How much money is enough?" And Rockefeller, without hesitation, responds, "Just a little bit more." He's joking, sort of. But it also reveals something true about his character. He was never motivated by having enough. He was motivated by having more, by growing, by winning. The actual money didn't matter to him that much. He lived relatively modestly. Didn't throw extravagant parties, didn't buy yachts or mansions everywhere. What mattered was the game. The competition. The challenge of building something bigger than anyone had ever built before. And by that measure, he won so completely that they had to change the rules to stop him. Here's what the Rockefeller story teaches us about capitalism. Unchecked, it tends toward monopoly, toward concentration of power. Left alone, markets don't naturally stay competitive. The winners consolidate and eliminate competition. That's not a moral judgment. It's just what the evidence shows. Rockefeller didn't break the system. He used the system exactly as it was designed, and he played the game better than anyone. The fact that his success nearly destroyed the competitive market, that revealed a flaw in the system itself. And it's a flaw we're still grappling with today. When Amazon dominates online retail, when Google controls internet search, when a handful of companies control social media. Facing the same questions people faced in 1911. How much power should one company have? At what point does business success become dangerous to society? And can you break up a modern tech monopoly the same way you broke up an oil monopoly? We haven't figured that out yet. But the Rockefeller case gives us a blueprint and a warning. The warning is this: breaking up a monopoly doesn't always work the way you think it will. Standard Oil was supposed to be destroyed. Instead, the breakup made Rockefeller richer and eventually led to the creation of even more powerful oil companies. Sometimes the cure creates new problems. But here's the thing: the breakup also worked in ways that mattered. It opened up competition. It allowed new companies to enter the market. It proved that no company, no matter how powerful, was above the law. It sent a message: you can win big in capitalism, but you can't win everything. That message still matters today. John D. Rockefeller died in 1937. By then, he'd lived long enough to see his monopoly broken up. His wealth multiply, his reputation shift from robber baron to philanthropist, and his industry completely transform the world. When he was born, people lit their homes with whale oil. By the time he died, oil powered cars, planes, factories, and entire economies. He didn't invent oil. He didn't discover it. He didn't even drill for it. But he figured out how to control it, how to refine it efficiently, how to distribute it everywhere, how to make it indispensable. And in doing so, he became the richest person in human history. His empire was broken by the Supreme Court, but his legacy, both the good and the baddies, still shaping the world today. Every time you fill up your gas tank, you're participating in an industry that Rockefeller built. Every time you see a Chevron or Exxon sign, you're looking at a piece of Standard Oil. And every time we debate how much power corporations should have, we're continuing an argument that started over 100 years ago in a courtroom, when 9 Supreme Court justices looked at the most powerful company in the world and said, "This has to stop." If you're fascinated by stories of power, money, and the people who changed history, hit that subscribe button. We're diving deep into the empires, the scandals, and the personalities that built the modern world. Drop a comment. Do you think Rockefeller was a genius or a villain, or both? Thanks for watching. And remember, history's richest lessons come from its richest people. See you in the next one.